Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide in the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our outstanding producer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. It is Monday, December 30th, 2024. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite. 6 minutes now past the hour of 12 noon. Welcome in an all-new live show after being out for a couple of days last week. Hope you enjoyed our year in review, What Makes Wisconsin Great tour. It was nice to be off for a couple of days. Happy holidays to each and every one of you. Belated Merry Christmas. If we haven't told you already. Happy Hanukkah for those in the middle of celebrating. Happy Kwanzaa and Happy New Year. Mr. Zommers, welcome back.
Welcome back, Todd.
It's nice to see you and nice to be here live. Miss being behind the mic, but it was nice to have a couple of days off as well.
Yeah, same here, but behind the board.
Right, exactly. Lots to talk about today, lots to catch up on. If you missed it, and would not blame you if you did, over the weekend, the MAGA leadership seems to be in a internal civil war of sorts over immigration. Going to let you hear it in their own words. Rather entertaining to hear Steve Bannon going after Elon Musk, by the way. And also, over the week, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is now in the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiencies, along with Elon Musk. Apparently, the news of the weekend was who is more important on Saved by the Bell, the old 90s TV show. Who are we idolizing? That's what's on Vivek Ramaswamy's mind. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Also, the seriousness of the issues, of course, of the politics of the day. And we have a What's Worse for you in hour two as well. Your phone calls, 855-752-4842. All that and more. But first of all, to kick off our week here on December 30th, our friend, ongoing contributor, he's a two-time chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, an attorney and a great author. Our friend Matt Flynn joins us live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Matt, happy holidays to you, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, good to be with you, Todd. Good to be back on the show, and happy holidays to you, and happy New Year.
Yes, happy New Year. Do you and your lovely wife Mary? You seem like, at least back in the day, you'd dress up, go to big parties in Milwaukee, and stay up until the sun comes up. What do you do on New Year's, Matt?
Well, what we're doing this time, go out with a couple of couples, go to an Italian restaurant. I love Italian food, and probably be back in the house at 10 o'clock, and may not stay up to watch the ball. I'm not kidding. Drop in Times Square. May not stay up.
Maybe
that
in
was
bed.
Very different 50 years ago. Believe me.
Right, I'm sure it is. Well, Matt, it's always. By the way, thanks for filling in a couple of weeks ago while we were traveling. I listened to the show. You did a great job, and I know our listeners always enjoy having you back on the show. So we'll have to have you do that again if you're so willing. First of all, how are you feeling, Matt? How is your health?
Well, reports from my desk have been greatly exaggerated.
Well, I'm
so great.
Good. I'm glad that you're feeling well. I mean, I say this, only half tongue in cheek here. Look, we were off for a couple of days. I'm going to run down a list of people just notable people who have passed away in the 5 days we were off here. Today, Linda Lavin, the great actress Linda Lavin, TV's Alice, and of course on Broadway as well. The great broadcaster Greg Gumbel from CBS. A former Republican state senator George Petak. Of course, if not for him, we would not have the Milwaukee Brewers, most likely in Wisconsin. My very dear friend, we're going to talk about him in a minute. Former Senate Majority Leader, Democrat Tim Cullen of the state of Wisconsin, passed away, or rather after a short illness here this last week. And then, of course, we found out yesterday, Matt, that former United States President, Democrat Jimmy Carter passed away. And I thank you for coming on and late notice. And I wanted to give your reflections on a couple of these people. Let's start with former President Carter. Of course, he was a one-term president, and many people talk about his post-presidency being a great success. But I was heartened today, Matt, to hear some of these folks talking about the fact that, because of the hostage situation in the 80s, the Iranian hostage situation, inflation, energy crises, some of the good things that Carter got done get vastly overlooked. I just wonder if you could give us your reflection from a personal and also as a Democratic leader, your reflections on former President Carter on this day.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Carter, and I met him and his wife and his son Chip in 1978. Mary and I were invited to the last party that he threw at the White House in a holiday party, December of 1978, because I'd been the Democratic nominee for Congress in the old 9th District, which is now the present 5th District, against Jim Sensenbrenner. And Rosalind Carter came out and campaigned with me at a senior center. Chip came out at Benji's, a terrific deli in Shorewood, north of Milwaukee. So we were invited, and we went out there, and I'll tell you what, you talk about black tie and all that sort of business. It was a beautiful, beautiful event, many hundreds of people. And he was a man of absolute unnegotiable integrity. And let me tell you something. Everybody talks about Habitat for Humanity and all that business. He brokered the peace accord between Egypt and Israel that has stood to this day and has ensured as much peace as there can be in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. That was absolutely monumental. He also was the first guy to call attention to climate change. He put solar panels on the White House. And the final thing I'll say is he was bringing us out of this recession. And the hostage situation, what was he supposed to do? He could have bombed Tehran. That would have killed the hostages. But they were released right the day that he left the White House because the Reagan administration, incoming registration, had been negotiating with them secretly and asked them to hold them till after the election. So let's cut all the baloney out. Nixon did the same thing in '68. Humphrey and Johnson were at the Paris Peace Accords, and they said to the Viet Cong, hold off, screw the Democrats, and we'll come in and we'll be a little better for you. Mm-hmm. So you got to understand the full nuances of history, Todd. You have to understand them.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you here, because you do that better than anybody else I certainly know and can call upon, and we appreciate that. When I think of Jimmy Carter, Matt, I think first word that comes to my mind is integrity. Somebody who had just an abundance of integrity, seemed not to have a dishonest bone in his body, and maybe almost to a fault when it comes to having to hold the White House. Somebody who was humble and had a lot of humility. And as you said, accomplished quite a bit as president, although I think history is starting to be kinder to him. Started the U.S. Department of Education, Department of Energy under his watch. But I think I heard a clip of him today, one of his first speeches. In fact, it may have been his inaugural speech at his inauguration, where he used the phrase, we have to come together, we have to work together, and we have to pray together. He was a man of great faith. And I think that, that's something in today's Democratic Party. It seems like, unfortunately for some, there seems to be this attack on faith. Carter really made it as a Southern Democrat, a Southern Baptist Democrat, a cornerstone of who he was. And Matt, agree or disagree, I think it was his authenticity that allowed him to bring his faith into his presidency.
Yeah, I totally agree. He wasn't some kind of a Tartuffe that was pretending anything. Mm-hmm. This guy lived it, and he was a hard worker, and he also had absolute integrity. I think if it weren't for Carter, it would have been harder for Clinton, for instance, from Arkansas to win in 1992. And I have to get back to everything he did accomplish. He accomplished a massive amount, but he didn't have Reagan's personality. He didn't display ego. He had plenty of ego. He was a nuclear submarine officer in Admiral Hyman Rickover's corps of new people coming into the nuclear fleet after the Second World War. This guy was an engineer. He was top notch, but he didn't wear it on his sleeve. He didn't go around sticking his chest out like Trump, or even like Reagan for that matter.
Right.
And Reagan was a more experienced guy because of Hollywood. So people, I think, made a mistake voting Carter out.
I remember as a kid in Southwest Wisconsin in Richland County in 1976. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Carter won Wisconsin in 1976. Am I right about that, Matt?
Right, he did. But
right.
What happened was one of the newspapers went on and said, Mo Udall wins Wisconsin primary. It was sort of like Dewey beats Truman.
Right.
No, I still have the paper. It's terrific.
But I think
Right.
one of the point that thanks for keeping me honest on that. I would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong. You were, I was whatever. I was 10 years old, but I remember Jimmy Carter doing a grassroots boat tour. He rode the Mississippi Queen down the Mississippi River and made a campaign stop in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, in southwest Wisconsin. And my grandparents and family drove, an hour from Richland Center to Prairie du Chien to go to see Carter campaigning in '76. And I think that grassroots campaigning is largely what helped him connect to people in rural Wisconsin.
No question. And the other thing was he was a peanut farmer, and a lot of the farmers in the 3rd Congressional District, remember back then Allbaugh did
Yep.
well, and those kinds of people.
Yep.
The farmers respected him, and it's just like Harry Truman. No one expected Harry Truman to take Wisconsin. Carter took Wisconsin, and the reason they took them is they were authentic, and they were hardworking, and there was no nonsense.
Yeah, I guess looking at applying that to today's politics, and you can't live in the past. Obviously, things change. We have to adapt. But I certainly think there were lessons from Jimmy Carter's presidency that I think would be applicable and helpful to winning in today's Democratic Party. Yes or no?
Yes, and not only that, it was unnegotiable integrity. He came in after the Nixon criminality and after he was pardoned by Gerald Ford, and people wanted to clean out the corruption. After Trump in 2028, they're going to want to clean out the corruption, and I think a Democrat has a good chance, and I think it's going to be somebody with unnegotiable integrity.
Yeah, and also somebody. There's a great article. I'm not sure. We're going to try to get to it today, Matt. There's just pulling it up here. There's a great article in Politico over the weekend on Brian Schatz, the U.S. Democratic senator from Hawaii, and he makes this point in this article that the Democrats need to start sounding like normal people, and he uses that phrase. And I thought, for a Democrat to say that, that's extraordinary, and it's about time. Really.
Right. Because what's coming out with this kind of identity politics thrust that's taken over our party's nominating process is that people don't see it as authentic. Mm-hmm. And if somebody were to come out, and they will in 2028, we're going to have a lot of candidates, and just talks plainly, talks exactly like Harry Truman or Jimmy Carter.
Right.
And tells it like it is.
Or quite frankly, whether we like it or not, like Donald Trump, he might not mean it, but he's blunt like the guy at the end of the bar. And I think that contributes to his success.
Yeah.
So, come on.
You can tell when Donald Trump is lying. It's when his lips move. Okay, I mean, this guy's not even remotely authentic.
He's always Matt Flynn. Stay with us. More Matt Flynn's remembrances of Tim Cullen and what's he working on in the book field. Back after this.
Real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Texting enrolls you in a recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone. I went through it a while back. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again. At work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
How do you think Don Rosen stays so
for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text. Text BEAT to
I don't know.
42424 right now
He's on
for your
Beat.
complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T. Plus,
He's on
text now will
Nugenix
include
Total
a bottle
T.
of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat
Don
incinerator
Rosen
ever,
looks like
to
he's
help
28.
you get back into shape
He's on
fast,
Nugenix T.
absolutely free. Text BEAT to 42424. That's BEAT to 42424.
Products and statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or illness.
I'm Dan Schaefer. Let's recombobulate. As 2024 comes to a close, we're taking our annual look back at the year that was, recapping our most read,
Dave in New
most
Berlin
listened to,
texting. Some
most
a-hole dumped a
impactful
water
stories,
heater in my
and
front yard last
here's
Wednesday,
what?
Todd. The damn thing is still there. I think I
What?
prefer to have a body dumped in my yard because the wall would have peeled that crap off my lawn by now.
Dave, I'm sorry to hear. Who dumps a water heater in your yard?
We wrote about the
That's
fight for fair
terrible.
maps,
You might need to
covered
get yourself a
elections in the
Ring
state
doorbell
legislature,
camera or
and
something.
everyone else.
Exactly
I wrote
right.
opinion columns and feature stories and conducted extended sit-down interviews like one with Senator Tammy Baldwin.
30 seconds.
I
Thank
hosted
you.
podcasts and radio shows and, of course, joined the civic media
On this side of the law, on that side of the law. Who is right, who is wrong, who is for and who's against the law?
Welcome back
Well,
to
you
the
see,
Todd
I
Allbaugh Show and
didn't
Matt
really
Flynn
mean you
Direct
any
on a
harm.
Monday, December 30th, 2024. Our friend and ongoing contributor Matt Flynn joins us on the show here for the first part, talking about some remembrances, of course, of former President Jimmy Carter, who passed away yesterday. And Matt, always great to have you along with us. We appreciate you being here. Another good friend of mine, a person who I called my informal boss, because although I worked for Republican State Senator Dale Schultz the last 3 years or 4 years of his term, he had a very close friendship and political alliance with former Democratic senator, or now former, but then Democratic State Senator Tim Cullen. Both of them had been former majority leaders for different parties, but Senator Cullen and Dale worked on a lot of bipartisan legislation. He was just last on this program back in September talking about his new book, Wisconsin Gerrymandering, The Fight for Permanent Fair Maps and Why It Matters by Tim Cullen. And was saddened when I got the news on the 23rd. He had a brief illness and passed away, I believe, of a heart-related condition, and didn't really tell anybody. It just kind of happened at 80 years old. He sure didn't seem like he was 80 years old. I know that you knew him as well, Matt Flynn. Your remembrances of former state senator and majority leader Tim Cullen.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. Todd, he and Dale, your boss, is a guy that I had a lot of respect for too. But Tim was a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. He was the majority leader. He was active in the Senate when I was the state party chairman. He had high unnegotiable integrity himself. He was very, very good at what he did. He served as in the state Senate on 2 occasions. Mm-hmm. Came back for a comeback back about 15 years ago. He was in municipal office down in Janesville. He was a quintessential public servant. Very honest, very likable. When he ran for a majority leader, he had one opponent, my namesake, Jim Flynn. I don't know if you remember him. He was the Lieutenant Governor. And he beat Jim Flynn. And Jim Flynn was a friend of mine, too, and I was partial to his last name, frankly. But
I'm sure you were.
I told Cullen, I said, yeah, right, yeah. But Cullen was a good man, and I didn't see him half enough, quite frankly, but whenever I did, he was very smart, very honest, and very hardworking, and you can only hope to have people like that in either party in our state legislature.
Yeah, we're going to play some cuts after the bottom of the hour of our conversation. Like I say, Senator Cullen was last on this program back on September 9th, talking about this book and other reflections. And it was a privilege to work with and for him. Even though, again, my main boss is a Republican, I was essentially helping his staff, Jim and Kelly, and my condolences to them as well. And quite frankly, my last round in the state capitol, working for a Republican the last 4 years, most of my friends who, other than our own personal office, outside of our own personal office, most of my closest friends in the Capitol at that time were Democrats and those that worked for Senator Cullen. And he was, as you said, a smart guy, a compassionate guy, a really funny guy, by the way. Right. One thing he didn't talk about a lot, although he would on occasion, he and his wife lost a son back in around 2008. He was going to UW Platteville Engineering School and died suddenly. And that was really the impetus. In talking with him a little bit, as you said, he after state senator, he served in Tommy Thompson's cabinet as Health and Human Services secretary. A lot of people don't know all the changes and things that he did to improve that institution in the state of Wisconsin. Then went into the private sector, I believe worked for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, then came back to Janesville and ran for school board. And then after his son passed away, decided to, you know what, I really need to get back in and make a difference. And that second round where he really fought with Dale on fair maps and made a difference.
Yeah, he had tragedy in his life, but something, he had a full life. He had a lot of friends. And you're right, he was very funny. He was very personable. That's how he got elected, frankly.
Yep.
I mean, voters have to like you, but once he's in, he was magnificent. Dale Schultz was too. There was a generation of legislators back then who did Wisconsin proud, and unfortunately, I'm not seeing that right now.
Yeah, we're going to talk. We're going to play some of these cuts after the bottom of the hour. of our conversation with former Senator Tim Cullen, who passed away this past week at the age of 80. About 2.5 minutes left, Matt. It is the holidays for those of our folks who are Jewish celebrating. We're right in the middle of Hanukkah, by the way. If you're looking for a Hanukkah gift, Matt Flynn, you're an author. Well, I'm not sure they don't have stockings at Hanukkah, but maybe what can you sit next to the dreidel?
Yeah, I want to promote one of my books, and thank you for permitting me to do it. China Code by Matthew Flynn. China Code. China Code. If you want a thriller, but very funny, it's been described as a comedy, where communist Chinese assassins come to Wisconsin to murder a math genius, Bernie Weber, who has broken their code because he has solved some mathematical problems. And the Latino and black gangs of Milwaukee rise up to take them on. If you want to see a book,
and comedy ensues.
If you know anything about the black, and believe it or not, it's comedy. I mean, do you know anything about the black and Latino gangs? And I don't think you do.
No, I've only through the book. It's great. It's a great read.
Right. And, well, look, I thank you, but it's really catching that. Yeah. So if you want to be one up, and put it in your book club, guys. I mean, all right. But China Code by Matthew Flynn. I'm a Navy veteran, so I'm able to throw in some military things and so on. But I like the book. A lot of people have praised the heck out of it. And it, believe it or not, it is a comedy. Here's a spoiler alert. It comes out okay. Bernie doesn't get killed. Okay, very good. But the truth of the matter is, if you want to see black and Latino gangs in Milwaukee take on Chinese communist assassins, this is the book for you, especially if you like comedy.
Quick question here, Matt. Tom and Jackson, if you can make it really quick, about less than a minute. Go ahead.
Right. I'm hoping you can put to rest. I thought I'd heard that in the election of 80, that the Republican, that behind the scenes, they had gone to the Iranians and promised them something. I don't know what, if they would hold the hostages until after the Democrat lost Carter. And I'm wondering, is that true or not? Because that dissuaded the election unfairly.
Matt, 45 seconds.
Yeah, it is true. And I don't know that it swayed the election totally. It certainly turned it into a landslide. I think Reagan was picking up steam. But that said, yes, that happened. And it happened with the Viet Cong back in 1968. The Republicans will fool around and they communicate them. And I don't know what they promise them, but the Iranians did not like Carter.
Yeah.
They did not like Carter. They were Muslim fundamentalists. Reagan played footsie with them. You're absolutely right.
Well, we always like you, Matt Flynn. Thank you so much, my friend, for taking time for us. Happy New Year to you and your lovely wife.
Happy New Year. Thank you, Todd.
All right, thank you. Matt Flynn, wherever books are sold, come on back. More remembrances on this Monday, December 30th, 2024 on Civic Media's Radio Network.
Madison's real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
As we move towards the new year, there are still a lot of question marks on what the tariffs might look like for the soybean market. I'm Ben Jarbo at the Midwest Farm Report, and with me is Donnell Rehagen, the CEO of Clean Fuels Alliance America, and he's explaining why instead of sending out these soybeans, we should use them domestically.
As farmers, we have the ability to either export or use it domestically. And I always like to try to see that domestic consumption grow, because once we increase domestic consumption, it seems like we add more value. We're going to crush the beans here. We're going to use the meal here to grow our own livestock operations, or else export value-added soybean meal and then use the oil for these fuels. It's much different than just sending the whole bean overseas and seeing all that value just go away.
Rehagen says that no matter what, the soybean crush is going to continue, so we might as well use it domestically, as it will also give a better market for value-added soybean meal. From the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo. We'll take a look at those midday markets right after this.
Did you know you can build a water and nutrient superhighway in your soil? You just need the Maximum Acre solution from Sound Agriculture. The easiest way to maximize your crop's access to nutrients all season long. How does it work? First, Source turns your soil into a nutrient factory. activating microbes that supply nitrogen, phosphorus, and micronutrients. Then Blueprint builds the delivery network. It provides a beneficial fungi called AMF, a powerful biological partner that plants rely on for macronutrients, micronutrients, and water. When used with Source, Blueprint expands the crop's reach beyond the roots, helping it access nutrients and water.
Seriously, this like leftover cat allergies from yesterday feels weirdly similar to a hangover. I consumed no alcohol.
Sources.
I have like a headache in this. I have a headache in the same spot in my head, and like,
it's terrible.
I don't get it.
Welcome back. I'm Ben Jarbo at the Midwest Farm Report. Now let's take a look at those midday markets from Chicago. The markets look to be moving in a mostly downward direction this Monday as cash crop corn is down 3 1/4 at $4.50 3/4, and new crop corn is down 2 1/2.
My advice for listeners: don't be allergic to cats.
January soybeans are down 2 1/2 at $9.77 1/2, and November soybeans are down 1/4 at $10.04 1/4. March wheat is down 1 at $5.45 1/2, and July wheat is down 3/4 at $5.63. January Class 3 milk contracts are showing a little bit of strength, though, as they are up 12 cents at 20.24 hundredweight, but February contracts are down 2 cents at 20.47 a hundredweight. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
It's the last time we'll see the sunshine this year. With partly sunny skies today, will become mostly cloudy by tonight, with more areas of dense fog. High temperatures today stay mild, tapping the upper 30s, and tonight slide below freezing to the mid-20s. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. It's 40 degrees at our studios.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
The Dom Salvia Show.
How about this one? Harvey K., a Delano Democrat.
The problem with that is that was his mother's family name. You might not realize that he had a father, too.
Come on, man.
Subscribe to my arguments and you can
30
vote
seconds.
a Dom Democrat.
Having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Tom Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 34 now past the hour of 12 noon on this Monday, December 30th. December 30th, Zommers, already. Now, tomorrow, New Year's Eve. Zommers and I'm thinking about, and just it's a thought, if you're a fan of CNN's New Year's Eve, like I am, you got Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen hosting, and they're taking shots throughout the evening. And by the last half hour or so, they're both kind of schlossed and the hilarity ensues. So I'm thinking, how would it be if you and I took shots throughout tomorrow's show on New Year's Eve?
You know, it depends whether you still want to have a show on January 2nd.
Right, exactly. I have to drive, so I have to Uber, and so probably not. But it would be entertaining. I think it would. I think it would be highly entertaining, but no, we'll probably take a pass on that. Speaking of New Year's Eve, now, if you want some high-class entertainment and actually learn something, download the Civic Media app on your Apple or iPhone device. Or speaking of people taking shots, on your Apple or Android device, download the Civic Media app. It's free, takes less than a minute. It's what Gail King calls a deal. And then tomorrow night, from 6 until midnight, tune it in to WRCO in Richland Center. 100.9 back in the old hometown. but anybody can listen anywhere in the world on the Civic Media app. Phil Nee and the entire cast and crew of WRCO, I may make a guest appearance, who knows? The big Trivia-thon. Been doing this for years, where and you know, I think you could probably still register if you call 608-647-2111.
You registered?
I still remember the number after 30 years. 608-647-2111, WRCO. You can register your team, and then you and your friends. And the great thing is with the app, you don't all have to be together. I've done this before. You can have friends and family live anywhere, and then they'll ask you a question, and you have a certain number, certain time, like 2 minutes, to call in or text in the answer, and then they keep track of the points, and then there's a winner at the end of the night.
Is Never Gonna Quiz You Up registered this year?
That was our name in past years. I got to check with my sister and Kira Sabin to find whether or not we're going to do it as a team, or whether I'm actually going to go and help at the station this year, but we'll see.
Also, Tony, watching on YouTube, thinks that we should take shots tomorrow and find out if we still have a show afterwards.
Probably would not. Probably would. There may be an opening from noon until 2 if we do that. Tony says, I love Cooper and Cohen on New Year's Eve, especially towards the end. Exactly, Tony. Exactly. But no, if you want to, and the cool thing is about Triviathon on WRCO is they have a lot of Wisconsin-based questions. So they try to pick questions that you can't just ask Siri or Alexa, or look things that you have to know or look up in Wisconsin sources. So it's a lot of fun. 6 until midnight on WRCO in Richland Center Triviathon. We'll see. Maybe Philip has a chance to stop by tomorrow and talk about it. We'll see.
I hope so. Yeah. And at the very least, if you listen in, you might learn something.
You might see. That's the thing. You might learn something.
Almost certainly.
Absolutely. So we'll be here tomorrow, and then a special New Year's Day show, and then back with live shows on Thursday and Friday. So it's a busy time of the year, the holidays, and hopefully you are all enjoying them. Spending some time today with remembrances on former President Jimmy Carter, who passed away yesterday at the age of 100, and also our friend and a guy who I was very, very honored to, I'll say, work for, although not quote unquote officially, but did a lot of work for him. Former Senate Majority Leader here in Wisconsin, Democrat Tim Cullen, who passed away last week at the age of 80. If you have any remembrances you would like to share, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. I'm also going to put in former state senator, Republican George Petak, who I did not know as well as Senator Cullen, but I do have a story about Senator Petak. My first real paid job in politics at the Capitol was during college, when I interned at the Capitol in 1992. And Dale Schultz's office at the time was on the top floor, and on the 4th floor of the Capitol. And next to us was new Senator George Petak. And one late afternoon, early evening in the summer, and the cool thing about the 4th floor offices at the Capitol is they have windows that open up, and then you could walk out onto the roof of the Capitol, and then there's like a railing around the roof. It's kind of one of those hitherto unknown facts. And so it was a nice evening, and so I just lifted up the window. I was standing out on the roof of the Capitol next to the railing, just looking out over Madison. And I hear from behind me, Todd, don't do it. Don't jump. And then he laughs, and it was Senator Petak, who had his own window open. And
nice.
And he came out then, and we had a very nice conversation. He was a lovely man, a great person. And when it came to the Milwaukee Brewers needing a new stadium, then Miller Park, the final vote, the person who changed their vote at the urging of former Governor Tommy Thompson and Senator Mike Ellis, the majority leader, was George Petak from Racine, Kenosha, and said, you know what, I got to do this. He changed his vote from a no to a yes. It passed. And that was the first time, and certainly in modern era, that started these slew of recalls, because the Democrats launched a recall against George Petak for changing his vote on Miller Park, and he lost in the recall. And that's kind of what started the whole ball rolling in all these goofy recalls. I'm just not a believer in recalls. I think that recalls should be used for the same thing as impeachment, high crimes and misdemeanors. Just because you don't like somebody's vote, I don't think that's a reason to recall a politician. But George Petak knowing that it might cost him his own career in politics, and it did. He went on to be a lobbyist after that. But had it not been for George Petak, we would have never had Miller Park, and we would not have the Milwaukee Brewers. They most likely would have left town and gone somewhere else. So the next time you go to now AmFam Field, next time you watch a Brewers game, think of George Petak, because he was really the guy that got that done. The person that I knew even better was State Senator Tim Cullen, Democrat, former majority leader, former Secretary of Health and Human Services. This is the thing. Cullen was the majority leader for the Democrats, and he left that position to go be a secretary for a Republican. And he did it because he cared about Wisconsin. And to me, that's one of his lasting legacies, Tim Cullen's, is that he put his state, his community, and others above his own self-interest. And none more so in retirement after he chose not to run for re-election in 2014. In his latest book, and he was here on the show back in September talking about it, I have it in my hands, Wisconsin Gerrymandering, The Fight for Permanent Fair Maps and Why It Matters by Tim Cullen. And for all of his books, by the way, not just this one, all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds, went to this foundation of Senator Cullen's, to the Janesville Multicultural Teachers Scholarship Fund, which he started back in 2008. Here is Senator Cullen from our conversation this past September talking about that foundation.
Well, I make no money on this book. All the profits from the book go to two scholarship foundations, one in Janesville, one in Beloit. And they are, one in Janesville, which I started in 2008, is called the Janesville Multicultural Teacher Scholarship. And Janesville, like so many communities, a formerly almost all white community, has become much more racially diverse. But our teacher corps was almost all white. When I started the program, the teacher corps was 99.5% white.
Wow.
And the students were 16% students of color. That 16% in 08 is 32% today, and it's on its way to 40.
Wow.
So started a scholarship program, all private money, no public money. It provides scholarships for people of color who want to be teachers and agree to teach in Janesville, or with a scholarship program in Beloit, same thing, but teach in Beloit.
We're going into a commercial break there as he was talking about that the late former state senator Tim Cullen, about this foundation scholarship fund. And not only was it, and by the way, the requirement to be the recipient of one of these scholarships to go into education was that you had to return to your local community in Rock County and teach for at least 5 years. And it's been phenomenally successful. Bringing kids, and many whom are kids of color, now adults of color, who are educators, so that you have more people teaching kids in these communities that look like them, who have their own background, who can understand their life experience better. All because of Tim Cullen. He also has an intern program where he brings kids from high schools in Rock County up to the Capitol for a week, 2 at a time. They work in a state Senate office. My former boss, Dale Schultz, always took a Cullen intern. We gave them projects. They would go around. They'd visit different secretaries. Many times they meet with the governor. It's a great program for kids. Here's Tim Cullen from this past September talking about one of these main issues, gerrymandering, on which he worked in a bipartisan manner with my former boss, Dale Schultz.
I saw gerrymandering happen. I was in the Senate from 74 to 86, left, and ended up coming back 25 years later in 2010, when we got to know each other. Mm. And the difference was unbelievable, because I saw the gerrymander happen in 2011. I saw the election results in 2012. And the problem is that when you have a gerrymander, which means you draw the lines of the map in such a way that a legislator in a majority party can't lose. I mean, they'd have to be arrested for 3 or 4 different felonies. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe not today, but
it used to be.
Yeah. And what happens then is the general election is decided the day the maps are drawn, not on election day. You can't lose the general election with these maps. But when you can lose is a primary election. So it depends on who gerrymanders. In Wisconsin, the Republicans gerrymandered. In Illinois, the Democrats gerrymandered. So this is a bipartisan problem, to say the least. If you don't vote with your leadership all the time, your own leadership will recruit a primary opponent because they're not risking losing that seat because it would just be a different Republican or Democrat. It won't be the one they want to get rid of because the one they getting rid of is trying to work with the other party, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So gerrymandering costs a lot in terms of any capacity for the two parties to work together, just because of that. And it's the same for the minority party, whoever they are. If somebody in the minority party starts talking to somebody in the majority party, they can get a primary orchestrated by their own leadership. All this, I always like to say that it's not a partisan issue. It's an abuse of power issue, because the day the maps are drawn, the general elections are over.
The late former state senator Tim Cullen, about his new book, Wisconsin Gerrymandering, The Fight for Permanent Fair Maps and Why It Matters, Tim Cullen. And he worked with my former boss, Republican Dale Schultz, and they actually had a bill based on the Iowa model that then former Majority Leader Republican Scott Fitzgerald wouldn't even allow to have a debate, wouldn't even allow to go to committee. So Cullen and Schultz paid on their own dime for us to go all over the state and have their own public hearings, which were phenomenally successful.
There were like 90 of them, too.
Yeah, it was incredible. And that's one of the other keys of Tim Cullen. He didn't care where a good idea came from. He cared in getting it done. And he also talked about some Democrats post-election in November attacking Liz Cheney and going off about, oh my gosh, how could Kamala Harris have an alliance with Liz Cheney? Here's what Cullen had to say about that.
I didn't know that was going on, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Winning and governing is about the big tent, about getting a lot of people on your side and getting independents to vote for you, not just your Democrat or Republican Party folks. And to have those quality people, and how she got kicked around and cost her a congressional seat in Wyoming, and she was on the January 6th committee. She knew, she has details that we don't even have.
Yeah,
I'm sure, and honorable. And I thought it was even more remarkable that her dad did it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Of the late Tim Cullen talking about the need to work bipartisanly. And he didn't just say that. He actually put his money where his mouth was, and he voted that way. He authored bills in a bipartisan fashion. He went and worked for Republican governor because he wanted to get things done, and he did. A remarkable career. Even a more remarkable person. A man of great compassion. And also really, really funny. He once told me, he said, Todd, anytime a politician tells you anything other than a yes, it's a no. And anything ever they tell you other than a no is a yes. And I laughed. He goes, you laugh, but it's the gol dang truth. And he didn't say gol dang. Back with more remembrances of Tim Cullen. He was also not a fan of Peacock, as it turns out. Come on back. It's the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Football season is back, and Gabriel the Promoter is ready to help you get the party started. Celebrate in style by booking a $100 round-trip party bus shuttle from Madison to Lambeau Field, complete with all-you-can-drink Miller Lite. Tickets to the game are not included. Don't miss out on the ultimate green and gold experience. Book your spot now. Brought to you by Gabriel Promotes and sponsored by Baldwin Street Grill. Call Gabriel the Promoter today, 414-944-1704, while spots are still available.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down, get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
When severe weather hits and the power goes out, do you have a plan?
30 seconds.
Thank you.
for reliable power and peace of mind.
I wanna see you peacock. You peacock. You peacock. You peacock. I wanna
Allbaugh Show,
see you
the Civic
peacock.
Media Radio Network at 9 before the hour of 1 o'clock on Monday, December 30th. Zomer's pulling up a little Katy Perry there. There's a reason for it. Talking about our remembrances of the late, great Wisconsin Senate Majority Leader, Democrat Tim Cullen, who passed away at the age of 80 after a brief illness last week. He was on the program last back in September. After talking about a lot of the serious stuff that we've already played for you, he was also a big sports fan, by the way. Had season tickets to University of Wisconsin men's basketball game, which he graciously took me to, gave me a couple of tickets here and there. Always appreciative of that. But he loved sports, loved basketball in particular. And we got talking about, how to watch the games now because so many of these games are streaming. And some of these are on the Peacock Network on NBC. Here's what Cullen had to say about that. And you're a Badger fan and a Packer fan, but that's tough this time of year right now.
Yeah, it is.
You share my hatred of Peacock.
Yeah, I do. If you're a Packer fan in Green Bay, you get to watch it without having Peacock.
Right.
But if you're a fan from Janesville or Beloit or Richland Center or whatever, the heck with you. You get Peacock or you don't get the game. That's just so offensive.
It is. I broke down and bought it this weekend because I really wanted to watch the game. Yes, I'm sorry to tell folks, my listeners, I broke down and bought Peacock for $7.99 for the month, and then they lose, and Jordan Love's out for how long?
3 weeks at least.
At least. Yeah.
Well, I refuse to give in. I'm not. It's not the money because it isn't much. $7.99 or whatever.
Right,
but
right.
I just refuse to cave into that system.
The late great Tim Cullen. He refused to cave in on buying Peacock, but he never refused to give in on hope. And as much as I'm going to miss him, and as heavy as my heart was last week in learning of his passing, I am so enormously thankful and filled with gratitude for having the opportunity to work for him, to spend time with him. I once drove him back from Superior to Janesville. And on that long car ride, I got an education, and even more so, I developed a friendship that lasted several years. I'm enormously thankful and grateful for his appearances on this program and his legacy of always thinking that we could do better in this state, that working together, that our best days are still ahead. And that is what I will always remember about Senator Cullen. May he rest in peace. I want to end this hour with a piece by former President Jimmy Carter's grandson. It appeared on Sunday morning on CBS back in October. Here is President Carter's grandson talking about his legacy.
My grandfather was born in 1924, had no running water, no electricity, and he grew up plowing fields behind a mule. He's lived to see both his life and this world transformed in so many ways. And through all of those changing times, he truly has clung to his unchanging principles: faith, respect for human dignity, equality, human rights, and the commandment that above all else, you should love your neighbor as yourself.
An MRI showed that there was a cancer.
Nearly a decade ago, he had 5 melanoma tumors in his brain and liver. And we quoted the old gospel song that says he's going to stay on the battlefield. And he has. For his whole life, he's been on the battlefield for peace, for human rights, for democracy, for the alleviation of human suffering, putting his faith and love into action for others. He has lived to see the Carter Center deploy an army of health workers, human rights workers, and democracy workers who are fighting disease, waging peace, and building hope. After 77 years of marriage, he was there for my grandmother until the end. He has seen and felt the outpouring of love from around the world. Last year, we collected nearly 20,000 birthday wishes from over 100 countries. And in Tiny Plains, Georgia, that brought tears to his eyes. He's seen that same technology that knits the world together can also pull us apart.
And how many on your voters list here?
He's seen democracy threatened at home and abroad. And he lived to see one of the most important projects of his life, peace for Israel and Palestine, at the brink. Looking back, his efforts at Camp David remain one of the few foundations for hope in that long and intractable conflict. But he has stayed on the battlefield. After a year in hospice, on a daily basis, we have no expectations for his body. But we know that his spirit is as strong as ever.
Jimmy Carter's grandson in his tribute to his grandfather back in October on CBS Sunday Morning. Jimmy Carter, of course, passed away this past weekend at the age of 100. Jimmy Carter was a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, and while initially serving on diesel boats, he began to help with the transition to nuclear submarine force. He left the military early to help run his family's peanut business after the death of his own father. While the U.S. Navy fleet had ballistic missile submarines stationed in Spain, the U.S. needed a new Atlantic base due to a treaty requiring withdrawal from Spain. Carter, a proud Georgia native, was instrumental in the creation of the new base known as Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay in Georgia. Kings Bay is the home of 6 Ohio-class SSBN submarines and 2 SSGN submarines, the USS Florida and the USS Georgia. Each SSBN sub carries 20 Trident nuclear missiles, and the 2 SNGs carry up to 154 Tomahawk missiles. Jimmy Carter's namesake submarine, the USS Jimmy Carter, has its own unique animal within the Seawolf class and the most capable submarine in the world. While the C-class submarines, Seawolf and Connecticut, were 353 feet long, the USS Jimmy Carter is a whopping 100 feet longer. Why? Well, the 100-foot section was slapped into the middle of the submarine called the multi-mission platform. What does that mean? Well, that's classified. But there are some guesses. SEAL teams and U.S. comm delivery launches, ROV and UUV operations, and one theory is it allows underwater engineering capabilities to tap into underwater cable systems for communications monitoring. Jimmy Carter made one last dive in the USS Jimmy Carter in 2005. Back with Hour 2, more remembrances and what's worth. Stay with us in the Civic Media Radio Network.
Madison's Real News and Great Conversation, 92.7 WMDX. John Peterson and Gordy Young.
On our next show, we'll look back at the year 2024.
And we'll take the time tunnel into the future and welcome in 2025.
Oh, I can't wait.
The John and Gordy Show, weekday mornings 6 till 8.
Ever tried balancing a dozen eggs in one hand while hopping on one foot? Or maybe juggling cats while riding a unicycle? Sounds ridiculous, right? But guess what? That's exactly
So for what's worse, we're doing the one that's on Trello
Your human
for
brain
today?
only has the capacity to focus on one thing at a time.
Phone or,
Okay.
So when you're behind the wheel, give driving your undivided attention.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
You can always continue the conversation on social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram. This is 92.7 WMDX Columbus, Madison's home for real news and great conversation. A Civic Media station.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. As Americans reflect on the legacy of former President Jimmy Carter after his death yesterday, presidential historian and ABC News contributer
Well, Happy New Year.
He was so down to earth.
She's
so
going to join us on the New Year's
someone
show.
you could talk to very easily.
All
despite
right, let's
the fact that he was our
we'll do the
39th
opening
president.
theme. And
funeral for the late President Carter is January 9th at National Cathedral in Washington.
then I'll kind of give you a cue, and you can go into the Alice theme.
Okay.
And I'll talk about her, and then I'll wrap talking about her, and I'll give you another just visual cue like that, and then we'll do the Greg Gumbel opening, talk about him, and then I'll try to time it so that we go out at 19 with the Greg Gumbel sign off, and then we'll do what's worse after that.
Sounds good.
Tornadoes and straight line winds ripped across 7 states, knocking out power, tearing up homes. This is ABC News.
Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. The new year might bring higher prices on just about anything that is made in or contains parts that are made in other countries. President-elect Donald Trump has promised a new slate of tariffs when he takes office. Tariffs, or taxes on imports, are paid by businesses buying goods from other countries. Economists say the increased cost of those tariffs are typically passed on to consumers of anything we import, from electronics to home goods to gas. UW Eau Claire Economics Chair Thomas Kemp says a significant number of Wisconsin businesses would feel the effects.
Let's say a small Wisconsin business is dependent upon a Chinese supplier for, say, machinery and equipment, that's going to impact them significantly. Or if they're a retailer that sells primarily goods and services made in China, they're going to be impacted by this.
In 2022, Wisconsin imports totaled $41 billion, the highest level recorded in state history. That's according to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And the country's longest living president has passed away. Here's Lisa Hale.
Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, has passed away at 100 years old. In 2002, Carter received the Nobel Peace Prize for his diplomatic work with the Carter Center. He was also very active in building hundreds of homes for Habitat for Humanity. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers released a statement that said, quote, "Former President Carter was a committed and dedicated advocate for peace, human rights, and treating others with dignity, decency, and respect, qualities that earned him respect and admiration from many across our country and around the world." President Carter died at his home in Plains, Georgia.
Wisconsin was the state that clinched the White House for Jimmy Carter back in 1976 with its 11 electoral votes. President Joe Biden declared January 9th a national day of mourning for Carter. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX News.
The Packers lose to the Vikings. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Vikings jumped out to an early lead again against Green Bay and held on to win this time 27-25 over the Packers. Former Packer Aaron Jones says, from Justin Jefferson to tight end TJ Hawkinson, the Vikings have depth.
We have weapons, and I think that's what was scary. We got so many playmakers, so guys understand that, and they make the most of their opportunities.
The Packers plagued with penalties, illegal formation, offsides on a field goal, even 12 men on the field. Head coach Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, that was on us as coaches. Called the personnel, somebody heard it different, and that's how we got 12 in the huddle. That's the first time that's happened in a really long time. You know, those are drive-stopping penalties.
And the NFL has announced that the Packers' final regular season game is Sunday at noon when they host the Bears. NBA, the Bucks lost to the Bulls over the weekend. Tomorrow, they play the Pacers in Indiana for an early New Year's Eve game. Tip-off time is 2 p.m. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
It's the last time we'll see the sunshine this year. With partly sunny skies today, will become mostly cloudy by tonight, with more areas of dense fog. High temperatures today stay mild, tapping the upper 30s, and tonight slide below freezing to the mid-20s. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 42.
Tons of glass artists share the same passion for eye-catching art as Ignite Glass and Gifts, so we're showcasing their work alongside our talented local artists and our in-house Ignite artists. The latest techniques, the hottest colors, and mind-blowing designs are here for you to enjoy. Madison's favorite for glass, gifts, and vape, Ignite Glass and Gifts, Monona Drive, Williamson Street, and O'Dana Road, plus IgniteGlassandGifts.com. Do your eyes a favor and see this stuff.
Matt Nair on air. This shouldn't be a thing.
Hot Dr. Pepper is the hottest holiday drink, but is it any good?
Jade, I'd like to answer that question.
Yes.
No. Have you ever had a hot soda in your life?
Yes, they're terrible. You can also do apparently 80% eggnog and 20% Dr. Pepper.
Get out of my country.
Matt Nair on air. Weekdays at 11.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our outstanding producer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. It is now 6 past the hour of 1 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the big program here on Monday, December 30th, 2024. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite. Back in after a couple of days off. Our look back at what makes Wisconsin great. Those tours with Trygve Olsen, Jane Matt Nair. Also, we played a little bit of that with our Amory. That was a great interview up there with Jane and Amy up there in Amory.
April Zemer.
April Zemer. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. And so that was a lot of fun. Thank you for all your work putting that together, Mr. Zommers. Appreciate that. Glad to be with you today. Live show again tomorrow. Luke Mathers will be in for a Tuesday Tangent with Lukester. On Wednesday, my very own sister, Heather Allbaugh-Galloy, will be joining me on the program for New Year's Day. We'll talk a little bit about the Rose Bowl. We're big fans of that. We've been to the parade, been to the game a couple of times, and we'll also preview all the games going on, big bowl championship series games. I guess they'll call bowl. Now it's the college football playoffs games on New Year's Day. And then back with live shows on Thursday and Friday. So that's the big Peter Rapine will be in on Friday with a hysterical look at the weekend review. Also, I don't know about you, Zommers. I'm enjoying the holidays, but I'm always feel a little bloated. And I came in today, and our very own Luke Mathers did all kinds of baking, and he brought in these delicious, like chocolate chunk. I don't know what they call. I call them delicious. It's great here. Sorry to eat in the air, but that's really good.
I'll have to go grab one later.
They're really good. And he's requiring us now to eat X number of cookies a day because they made so many over the holidays.
We'll see.
Did you have some holiday baked goods as well?
Definitely. Yeah. Cookies for sure. Mostly cookies.
Yeah. It's a great time of year. My mom made the traditional Bohemian Christmas bread, which was absolutely fantastic. She did all kinds of cookies herself. So I had some eggnog. It was a good time had by all. So it was in Richland Center, was up in Shawano over the weekend, seeing my dad and stepmom up there. And so the family got together, and it was just, I had the chicken. My stepmother makes great chicken wings. So it was eating my way through the week, quite frankly.
Weren't we all?
Coming up this hour, what's worse? Your chance to phone in and be a part of the pressing questions of the day. And yes, we're going to get into talking a little bit about politics over the weekend. MAGA world has stirred things up now amongst themselves this time. The leaders of the MAGA folks have decided to go after each other. And what they've decided to go after each other on is interesting. We'll explain here in a little bit. But first of all, a tough week. This last week, as we said, lost former President Jimmy Carter at 100, former State Senator former State Senator Tim Cullen, my God.
You're about to get a phone call from Dale.
Right. Dale, I talked to him this morning. He's very much alive. Former State Senate Majority Leader Tim Cullen, who passed away at 80. Former State Senator George Petak, Republican, who passed away, I believe, at 78. And then there were some celebrities that passed away as well.
Early to rise, early to bed. And in between, I cooked and cleaned and went out of my head. Going through life with blinders on, it's tough to see. I had to get up, get out from under and look for me. There's a new girl in town, and she's
incomparable Linda Lavin, not only an actress, but she sang this theme song to her own show. Linda Lavin, longtime TV and Tony-winning stage actress, best known for her Emmy-nominated role as that title character on the sitcom Alice, has passed away. According to her publicist, she was 87 years old. Linda Lavin died yesterday from complications of recently discovered lung cancer, according to her rep. She had been promoting her new Netflix series, No Good Deed, and was shooting an upcoming Hulu comedy series called Mid-Century Modern when she got the diagnosis. Lavin's career began on Broadway as a child actor in the 60s and was nominated for her first Tony in 1970. She would go on to 6 nominations, winning in 1986 for Broadway Bound. Always with a foot in the door in both TV and stage, Lavin took a recurring role on the ABC cop shop sitcom Barney Miller in 1975, which landed her the role of the titular truck stop waitress in the 1976 sitcom Alice. The series ran for 9 seasons on CBS. You're too young to watch it. Have you ever seen reruns like on Nick at Night or anything like that?
Not of that show, no.
Yeah, it was a family staple of ours. Was very relatable because towards the end of the show, my parents got divorced. I think the whole single mom and kid thing was relatable. But it was also one of the great characters was Flo, the sassy waitress from the South, and her tagline was "Kiss my grits." So somebody would say something, she'd say "Kiss my grits," where she was really ticked off. And then you had the dingy, the guy who owned the diner was Mel Sharples, and then you had Vera. And Mel would call her the dingbat because she was just a spacey, kind of flighty person. And hilarity ensued. People would come into the cafe, and it was well written and a lot of fun. You can still see it on various places on TV. So Linda Lavin has passed away, and she has left us at age 87.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Greg Gumbel. Welcome to the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show. Just a short while ago, the selection committee finished up this year's tournament brackets. 32 teams received an automatic bid, 36 await an at-large.
That is the incomparable Greg Gumbel as he opened up each and every Selection Sunday show for the NCAA tournament on CBS. He also had a great career in the NFL, calling games for CBS as well. Greg Gumbel passed away over this last weekend as well, the age of 78, according to his family, of cancer. This one came as a bit of a surprise. We hadn't heard from him. He, for those who are big basketball fans, for the first time in over 20 years, he did not host that show that you just heard, Selection Sunday show, had someone else sit in, and they said, well, he was dealing with family medical issues, but that was it. And look, I mean, to each their own, right? But apparently Greg Gumbel was one of those people that really liked to keep things to himself. So he did not share his diagnosis with a lot of people. And now it has come out that he told his closest friends and associates, look, we're going to try these treatments, and it's either going to work or it didn't. And, of course, it obviously did not. And he succumbed to the cancer over the weekend, 78 years old. And I found one of the best tributes over the weekend to Greg Gumbel from his colleague, Seth Davis on CBS. And just so well written. I want to share a little bit of this, bit of this with you. He says, quote, Greg Gumbel did not care for parades. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was something about the artifice of it all. The way people get together and cheered for all those silly things that were strolling by. Mostly, I think it was an affection, a touchstone of humor for Greg to come off as curmudgeonly when everyone knew he was actually the sweetest man alive. Greg also didn't like golf. He tried it a couple of times, hated it, gave it up, and spent the rest of his life mocking the game and those who enjoyed it. This was a constant source of amusement because Clark Kellogg and I love golf almost as much as we love college basketball. When we waxed poetic on the CBS set about our prospective games and the courses we played, Greg would always sit back in his chair and roll his eyes. He would make us chuckle with the overly grave tones he used when reading a promo on CBS's golf coverage. If a highlight came on showing a player about to strike a putt, Greg would crack, bet it goes in. And of course it did. Then stepping away from the article a little bit by Seth Davis, he talks about the fact that he was a consummate professional, that he treated everybody on the set with respect, from the set crew, the camera people, and that he really only got riled one time because when we watch these things, to people that might not understand media, when you're watching college basketball, especially the first round, and games are starting and ending at each different times, well, the guys in New York, they're doing all these cut-ins and sometimes within seconds of each other. And people are talking in your ear and you got things in front of you. Well, apparently Gumbel had called and said, now we're going to take you to Gonzaga and Michigan or whatever the game was. And the producers took the audience to somewhere else. And Gumbel just kind of threw his pen up in the air and was not happy because it made him look like an idiot. And one of the camera people, who was Gumbel's one of his best friends on the set, said, made a smart ass comment to him and made him actually start laughing again. But that's pretty much as mad as Greg Gumbel ever got. And Davis goes on just to talk about what a great friend he was, how they got together, he and Clark Kellogg and Greg Gumbel, every selection show, and would talk and have a dinner every year, and how much he was involved in his kids' life, that Davis would take his kids into the set from the time they were little, and Gumbel always had time for them. And look, I have the fortune of knowing a couple of people in higher echelons of media who are extraordinarily nice. And I think that when you have somebody like Greg Gumbel, I mean, I never saw him make a mistake on the air, whether it was calling. He was the first black commentator or play-by-play person to ever call a Super Bowl, by the way. First person of color to ever call a Super Bowl. Was a historical figure. Was at ESPN for a while before he went to CBS. Called play-by-play games, hosted the NFL on CBS. Then, of course, was the studio host for many years of men's basketball, the NCAA. It will not be the Final Four like it has been without Greg Gumbel. It just won't. But to know from the people that worked with him the closest that he was also a man of character, a man of humility, and a man of compassion just fills my heart. Davis ends this by saying, I've known for a while that this day will probably be coming, but now that it's here, I can hardly believe it. Greg leaves behind a legacy that is virtually unparalleled in the sports broadcast business. He worked in multiple places, the highest level, calling Super Bowls and Final Fours and countless games in between. If you watched him on TV and thought, he seems like a great guy, I'm here to tell you that you're right. You can't be in front of the camera for that many hours over that many years and hide who you really are. And even if you could, Greg would have never tried. Here's Greg Gumbel's sign-off at one of those Final Fours.
And so tonight, after years of sustained excellence, Connecticut coach Jim Calhoun and his spirited Huskies finally got the shot they deserved, and they made the most of it. Our congratulations also to Duke coach Mike Krzyzewski and his Blue Devils, who throughout the season represented the gold standard in college basketball. With 2 national titles and 5 trips to the Final Four, Duke can still lay claim to the title as the team of the 90s. This mad march of 64 teams and 63 games has
was 78 years old. May he rest in peace. We'll be back right after this.
Madison's Real News and Great Conversation, 92.7 WMDX.
I should have given you a signal.
I thought I was timing it. I wasn't doing a very good job.
Enjoy free Jello shots with every Green Bay touchdown. Stock up on $20 buckets of White Claw and High Noon. $15 assorted buckets of Busch Light, Miller, and Bud products. Plus $4 off wing baskets when you dine in. Come for all the fun on game days at the Lazy Oaf Lounge, North Stoughton Road in Madison. Follow them on Facebook and find the full menu at lazyoaflounge.com.
When you're having computer problems, you need a company you trust to get things working again, quickly and affordably. Madison Computer Works has been doing that for business and residential customers for decades. Our computer care plans take away the hassle of being without your computer or needing to bring it in for repair. Starting at only $10 a month, our local and friendly techs provide remote help and can fix most problems in just minutes. Call 608-231-8000 and sign up today. Madison Computer Works, computers that work for you.
Hey there, it's Carrie Joy with your Work Money Minute. On my YouTube channel, I recently talked to Amanda Clayman, a financial therapist and an all-around excellent person. We talked about how to reduce money anxiety, and her advice was really helpful. She said, unless we have a time to do money, we don't have a time to not do money. Meaning, if we set aside some time to think about and manage our money, it lets our brain stop worrying about money all the time. For example, I have a monthly money meeting with myself, which lowers my money anxiety and helps keep me on top of my finances. If you don't already, set and keep that money meeting with yourself. It'll help your wallet and your peace of mind. Remember what Amanda said, unless you have a time to do money,
This one goes out to Dale Schultz.
I woke up still not dead again today. The internet said I had passed away.
Poor Todd.
If I died, I wasn't dead to stay.
Yes, that's probably a good thing to make clear. Not Freudian, but slipping. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of people last week, and I meant to say former Senator Tim Cullen, who did pass away at the age of 80 last week, and I started to say my former boss. So yes,
only because they work so closely together.
Yes, they had a very close friendship, and Senator Cullen will certainly be missed. Welcome back to the show. 21 now past the hour of 1 o'clock. Talking also about Linda Lavin, TV's Alice, passing away. And this brings up from Dave in New Berlin. We should do a whole show or a segment, we will sometime, on old TV shows, and asks, does Todd have a favorite roommate on Three's Company? Great show. Favorite roommate. Boy, that's tough. I'm tough between Jack and Chrissy. Chrissy was entertaining and just being an airhead and maybe laugh a lot with her lines. But I think just the slapstick comedy of Jack and some of the looks and some of the facial expression. He was kind of the 1970s, early 80s Jim Carrey. John Ritter was. And I think just the great acting expanse that was John Ritter as Jack on Three's Company. So I'll go with Jack. You ever seen that show, Zommers?
I have not.
You have not. No. Great show. Great show to dial up. All right, 22 past the hour of 1 o'clock. Time once again for What's Worse. Let's go.
Then, of course, the choice is yours. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that.
Time once again for What's Worse. No prize money involved. Simply your chance to have your voices heard across the statewide Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. By the way, somebody was it, who was it? Andrew in Maine asking my sister's going to be on the show on Wednesday. Heather, he says the greatest production assister, not assistant. See how he did that? A sister and favorite Allbaugh sibling. Will she be live in person? Kind of, sort of. Because we're taping the whole thing today, actually.
So the answer is neither?
But kind of, sort of both. Anyway, yeah, Heather will be here talking about the Rose Bowl and whatever else we want to talk about. Maybe we'll just drink on January 1st. My mother's having a heart attack. Would you quit talking about that? She's very concerned about my liver. There's nothing wrong with it. What you have to understand is I talk about it a lot. I talk about drinking a lot more than I actually do.
Because it's funny.
Because it's kind of like Dean Martin. You know how you always used to have a cigarette and drink and he act drunk? I don't act drunk, I don't think, on the show. But he really didn't drink that much. It was a bit. It was a thing. That's all it is. But anyway, yeah. All right. Here we go now. What's worse? And this is timely. Timely indeed, as Mike Lucas likes to say. Losing your phone or losing your keys. What's worse? Losing your phone or losing your keys. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. You could also text us on the Civic Media app. What's worse? Losing your phone or losing your keys? Text us in and let us know, or call in as well. Cindy, listening in Appleton on the phone line. Cindy, thanks for calling in. What's worse, losing your phone or losing your keys?
Well, I just lost my keys at the grocery store the other day, locked myself out, so.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm losing my keys. I mean, I just had been at one of the dollar stores like 5 blocks from my house. If I would have did it there, I could have walked home. But no, I'm like 5 miles away from home now, so. Yeah.
So what did you do?
I just called a friend, and she came and got me, and then took me home and got my keys, and went back and opened my, because I have a spare home. But,
right,
the whole point is, duh.
I know it. I've done both, and I don't know why. I guess I've lost my keys at home. Here's an embarrassing story I'll tell myself. This was years ago. I couldn't find my keys. I need to go to work in the morning, and I looked everywhere. And finally, in fact, I had to call in and say I was going to be late. I couldn't find my keys. And I didn't know where my spare ones were. So I did what they said to do, like literally started writing out what I did the night before. And it turned out I'd gotten groceries. And I put my keys in the freezer when I put food away in the freezer.
Gosh.
My keys were in the freezer. My truck keys. You ever done that, Cindy? Cindy, she's like, I'm out of here. If you're that goofy, I'm out of here. Are you still there, Cindy?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Have you ever locked your you put your keys in like a place like the freezer like I did?
Well, actually, I dropped them one time in a tote. Like I keep a couple of totes upstairs to put stuff in. And I dropped it in the tote, and I'm like, I know they're in my house somewhere, but I did the same thing you did. I kind of backtracked and found my tote, the keys to my tote. But yeah, stuff like that just drives, because you know you've got them somewhere. It's just like your brain's in a different place, and you don't make that connection, and it drives me crazy when I do stuff like that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Cindy, for the call. Happy New Year to you. Appreciate you calling in. What's worse, losing your phone or losing your keys? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Tom in Jackson, listening on WXCO, says keys. Losing your keys are worse. Troy, our friend Troy Mount Horeb, listening on WMDX in Madison, says the phone. Keys are easier to replace. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. WXCO, Tom and Jackson, airhead. Not sure what that means, but okay. I'm the airhead for locking my truck keys or putting my truck keys in my freezer. Llama, listening on WMDX in Madison, says the worst is when you lose your keys and find them in your pocket.
Or like my mom would lose her glasses all the time, and we'd be like, Mom, they're on your forehead.
Again, I will tell the story of myself. I didn't look that long, but I have said, where the H are my keys? And they were in my hand.
I used to have a habit of locking my keys in my car.
Really?
And then as Cindy said, having your phone so you can then call somebody to help you, either break into your own car or drive you home to get the spare keys, it has been very useful. So for me, losing your phone is worse because then you can't contact anybody to help you.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. Heather watching on Facebook says our house has had to invest in the electronic tiles, so both phones and keys can be located. FYI, I have not lost either. Oh, Heather says she has not lost either. Now, see, that's with the iPhones, at least you have the,
Find My Phone.
Find My Phone thing. So that makes it a little bit easier. I've used it with my AirPods or whatever the heck you call them. I know. Well, give us a call. We'll keep taking phone calls on that. Take a little talk about news as well. Losing your phone or losing your keys? What's worse? 855-752-4842. Come on back. Talk about politics in Washington and how it relates to Saved by the Bell? Screech? Yes, Screech is in the news. Come on back.
So going with the theme.
Great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
Sure. Come with that with the theme. And we might go back to it. We'll come with the theme. We'll do the CNN report.
Madison will soon have more space.
And then we can bring the theme back a little bit while I explain this setup. We can ask people about that. And then I might use the serious cuts in between.
Okay.
The new 120-bed hospital is east of the interstate.
One time I locked my keys in my car outside of a Quick Trip, and one of my friends who lived close by came over to help me break into my car, like sticking an antenna in the window to get the lock. And a police officer is just watching us struggle to break into my car outside of Quick Trip, and then walks over, is like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "This is my car. Those are my keys on the seat. I'm an idiot." He's like, "Oh, okay."
Triple what was available a few years ago. And for a second year in a row, nationally, gas prices have dropped. Here's Melissa Kay.
Gas prices fell again last week, dropping 5.9 cents per gallon for an average of $2.75 across the state. This is 2.7 cents per gallon lower than a month ago.
Thankfully,
5.7 cents
I haven't done that in
this
years.
time last year. 2024 marks the second year in a row of declining prices on the national level as we close out the year. Officials at Gas Buddy expect another price cycle in the Great Lakes region, but overall, the national average should remain mostly stable.
Today, you'll pay about $2.77 for a gallon of regular here in Dane County. And did you hear about this? Yesterday was the first ever tug of war between Packers and Vikings fans. They met on a bridge between Stillwater, Minnesota and Hudson, Wisconsin, so they were right on the border. Fans of each team pulled
Dave,
on a
you're absolutely right. That's going to
300-pound
be part of the
rope.
discussion.
People
Stay
had to pay
tuned.
to participate, and 60% of proceeds went to first responders in the winning state. Organizers say they ended up raising about $4,000. While the Packers couldn't pull off a win yesterday, their fans could. The Wisconsin side won 3 out of 5 times. Now they're hoping to make this a yearly tradition. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX News.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. Batman fans eagerly awaiting the second installment of the new franchise will have to tap the brakes. Variety reports that the Matt Reeves-directed Batman 2 has been delayed a year and will now hit theaters in 2027. The film was originally slated for an IMAX release that would hit theaters October 2nd of 2026. Warner Brothers has announced that taking those screens will be a new Tom Cruise film that they are hoping to get on the big screen to qualify for the 2026 Oscar season. Here's one of Pete's picks. The Order, starring Jude Law as an FBI agent tracking a white supremacist group, is a really solid watch. Based on a true story from the 1980s, Law tracks the gang as they rob banks and set bombs off, terrorizing the Pacific Northwest. The film has good action and is a great detective story. The Order also stars Nicholas Hoult as the leader of the criminal group, Ty Sheridan as a local sheriff's deputy, and Journey Smollett as an FBI agent. The film has been a hit with critics and audiences alike. Strongly recommend. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
It's the last time we'll see the
David
sunshine
Berlin,
this year.
it's or
With partly
something.
sunny
Or
skies
something.
today will
That's
become
what it
mostly
is.
cloudy by tonight, with more areas of dense fog. High temperatures today stay mild, tapping the upper 30s, and tonight slide below freezing to the mid-20s. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 42.
Blind Shot Social Club, a perfect blend of cool, casual dining, indoor golf with space for events, craft cocktails, and non-alcoholic drinks too. A hidden gem on Madison's East Side. Blind Shot Social Club, open to everyone. BlindShotSocialClub.com.
Hi, this is Mike Clemens. I cover sports in Wisconsin for our Civic Media radio stations. Wishing you a happy and healthy holiday. We already have family arriving here. I'm sorry, excuse me. Grandma, that's not dark chocolate. That's a hockey puck. Merry Christmas, everyone.
That's a pretty good one.
That's funny.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking. Now start
25 seconds.
For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible.
When I wake up in the morning and the alarm gets out of warning, I don't think I'll ever make it on time. By the time I grab my books and I give myself a look, I'm at the corner just in time to see the bus fly by. It's alright, cause I'm saved by the bell.
Welcome back to the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 34 now past the hour of 1 o'clock on Monday, December 30th. Sommer's on the board, dialing up a little theme song from Saved by the Bell. Again, Sommer's probably slightly too young.
I've seen a little bit, but not much.
I was older when kind of more my sister's generation, but I did watch a lot of episodes of Saved by the Bell. Big show. And it figures in, just bear with us, hold on. It figures into this more serious news story that popped over the weekend. And this is very interesting to me, by the way. So I could explain it all, quite frankly, but I heard no more succinct and better example of putting together what all this is about than CNN's own Caitlin Collins over the weekend. Essentially, internal civil war, I guess what other kind of civil war would there be, but internal civil war has broken out against MAGA between Elon Musk and kind of the quote unquote Trump base. And so you got Elon and his it's kind of like Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble. You got Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy. and they're taking on the rest of the MAGA Trump world over immigration and visas. So here now, a serious breakdown from Caitlin Collins on CNN. But listen to what Ramaswamy is talking about. We're going to come back and talk about it. Here's Caitlin Collins.
Tonight, as President-elect Donald Trump is preparing for a widespread immigration crackdown when he takes office 25 days from now, we're seeing a crack between some of his top advisors and his MAGA base. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are both facing major blowback from their own supporters for not only backing, but encouraging offering more visas to highly skilled foreign workers. Over the Christmas holiday, Musk posted this online saying, think of this like a pro sports team. If you want your team to win the championship, you need to recruit top talent wherever they may be. He later added, I'm referring to bringing in, via legal immigration, the top 0.1% of engineering talent as being essential for America to keep winning. He's talking about H-1B visas, which allow employers to hire highly skilled foreign workers. Musk, who himself is from South Africa, said that he once had this kind of visa, and he's arguing that Silicon Valley is facing a shortage of excellent engineering talent, as he put it. But the annual cap on those kinds of visas right now is at $65,000, with another $20,000 for those who get a master's or a doctorate in the U.S. Musk is being backed up by his partner in Trump's government efficiency initiative, Vivek Ramaswamy.
All right,
he
stop
says
right there, please. Let's stop right there, please. We'll pick up one in a second, Zommers. So this is the serious part of the conversation. All right. So Elon Musk is saying, all that rhetoric about mass deportations and not letting anybody else in, that was really nice during the campaign. But you know what? We really do need to bring in some talented folks from outside the country because, you know what? We don't have enough engineers. And that's a whole nother bottle of wine, New Year's wine we could get into, particularly here in Wisconsin, where there's a wait list at the University of Wisconsin-Madison for engineering. I just hung out with my godson and his two buddies out in Seattle, both graduates of the University of Wisconsin-Madison Mechanical Engineering Program, now proudly working for our United States military, God bless them, out there in Bremerton, suburb of Seattle. And we're putzing around here in Wisconsin on, by the way, both Republicans and Democrats on not getting this University of Wisconsin Engineering School built, but we have a lack of engineers in this country. And so Musk is saying, you know what, we do need to let some people in, as it turns out, just the ones that we want. And the loyal Trumpists are like, wait, that don't add up. So that's a legitimate conversation to have. Here's what Barney Rubble, Vivek Ramaswamy, weighs in on his part of it.
Vivek Ramaswamy, he says it's a cultural issue that there aren't more competitive engineers in the U.S. Here's what he said online. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel and Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. But that argument is not going over well with Trump's MAGA base, certainly not online. Some of them saying, we did not ask them to engineer an immigration policy. Tech wants indentured servants, not high-skilled workers. You don't even know what MAGA immigration policy is. Now, Trump himself, who I should note restricted H-1B visas in his first term, has said on the campaign trail this time around that he did want to make it easier for educated foreigners to work in the U.S.
All right, let's stop there. We can talk about what Trump actually said a little bit later, if we get to that today. But I want to go back to Barney Rubble, Vivek Ramaswamy, talking about in a country that what do you say, celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champion, the jock over the valedictorian, and here's where it took a weird turn. Zach and Slater over Screech and Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters. So let's play that theme again, Zombie. There we go.
When I wake up in the morning and the alarm gets out of warning, I don't think I'll ever make it on time.
Here's my point. This is fantastic. It takes Vivek Ramaswamy to come up with a bit. Why? Ramaswamy must have watched a lot of 90s television, number one, or early 2000s, whatever it was. If those that don't know, Saved by the Bell, a former sitcom, and Zach and Slater were kind of the cool kids of the TV show, and Screech was like the nerd. But do you really want to say that, Vivek? Because here's how it turned out. Now, Zach, he was kind of the jock of or one of the cool jocks of the show. Some people would say it was a little snarky, but he was played by Mark Paul Gosselaar, who has a very respectable career in television and film. He's still working, by the way. In film, he had a new movie come out last year called The Portrait. And on television, he's also in the main cast. He plays Hugh Sir Evans on a show called Found. He was also on a show called Will Trent on Barry. So, I mean, he's done a lot of work. He's been nominated for several awards. So, I mean, he's had a respectable career, Mark Paul Gosselaar, and that's the guy that played Zach on Saved by the Bell. Now, you want to talk about Mario Lopez, who played Slater, who was like a wrestler, easy on the eyes, I'll say that, and he's aged very, very well. Now, there's no more, I mean, I guess there are people more successful, but Mario Lopez has like 2-3 radio shows. He's on TV hosting like an Entertainment Tonight program, whatever that's called. The guy is everywhere. Very, very successful, Mario Lopez. Still working, still very successful. And he played Slater. So that's Zach and Slater. Now, Screech was kind of the annoying nerd guy on the show. He played, I always had this really high voice like that. Like his voice on Screech or whatever. Now this, and look, I take no pleasure in people's trials and tribulations. I mean, I wouldn't want to give my troubles to a monkey on the rock, as David Letterman says. But here's a guy who got into a lot of trouble. He was into drugs and things like that. In 2006, Diamond directed, and because I guess the guy he couldn't get any other work, so he directed and released his own celebrity sex tape. Now, I don't know anything about sex tapes, but if you're going to have a sex tape, don't you want it like leaked? Don't you want it like, somebody found it? And shouldn't it be good? But Dustin Diamond, who played Screech, did his own sex tape and released it called Screeched, Saved by the Smell. I'm not making this up.
Oh my God.
I'm not making this up. All right. And so he said that, and it did not go well, as you might think. Well, it did not go well. And then he went into professional wrestling for a while. I mean, then the poor guy was bankrupt, and he died of cancer in 2021 at the age of only 44. That's Dustin Diamond. That's Screech. So if you're Vivek Ramaswamy, do you really want to be saying why are we holding up Zach and Slater versus Screech? What's your thought on this? Who should we be looking up to? Zach and Slater or Screech? 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842.
Apparently.
Or you could text us. And by the way, I didn't come up. This is Vivek Ramaswamy. It ain't me.
Apparently, he also formed an alternative metal band called Salty the Pocket Knife. And he played bass and wrote music. And he also appeared as a host at the 12th annual gathering of the Juggalos.
Of the Juggalos? What are the Juggalos? I've never heard of the Juggalos.
Oh boy, this is a whole.
All right, we don't want to go into it. All
Clown
right.
people.
Clown. Oh.
I'll just put it that way.
855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Who should we be looking up to more? Zach and Slater or Screech? Mark Paul Gosselaar and Mario Lopez or Dustin Diamond? Because Ramaswamy thinks it should be Screech. He also apparently not a fan of Stefan on Family Matters. I just think it's hilarious. All right, maybe not hilarious. I think it's entertaining. The fact that these are the people that are now going to run our government in a matter of weeks. 855-752-4842. Jack in Merrimack. Jack, thanks for calling in. What do you think of this very important, as I say it, tongue-in-cheek debate brought on by MAGA and Vivek Ramaswamy?
Well, these are the the continuing insanity of the MAGAs. The problem is that it's going to take us into 2025 and beyond. But without going there, let me simply say this. This is the same group of people that screams and yells, we got to be drilling more on American soil and producing American oil for Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they want to hire people from all over the world instead of putting a little bit of money into the universities so that, for example, all qualifying students could have a university education, and maybe a few of those would actually become engineers, and maybe we wouldn't have to go outside of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, this is craziness.
Great point.
End of my thread.
No, I always appreciate it, Jack. And I agree that we need to put more money into our STEM education programs, both K-12 and also at the university. We need to be creating and graduating more STEM people. STEM meaning, things like math and science.
Science, technology, math, and
Thank you. I thank you for saving me, Jack. But you're absolutely right. And we don't have enough. But of course, that's going to take time to gin it up, so to speak. And in the meantime, I was somebody who handled immigration for a congressman at one point in my life. I'm very familiar with H-1B visas, and they're very necessary for certain parts of our economy until we can graduate more people in engineering programs here in this country. And so it just doesn't happen very often, but I'm going to say on this very narrow issue, I agree with Elon Musk on this. But the problem is that the Trump folks and Trump himself has promised one thing and now he's got to do another, and it's going to create this fight. And it's kind of, like eating popcorn. But I appreciate the call, Jack. Thank you so much. 855-752-4842. Bronwyn, in listening on WMDX, says Screech. Where'd it go here?
Screech wasn't very smart, really. The girls were the intelligent ones.
Yes.
And you are spot on.
Yes. We're talking about Saved by the Bell. The girls on that show, Saved by the Bell, they were the intelligent ones.
Yes.
Absolutely. Cindy in Appleton, listening in. Cindy, what say you? What do you think about this thing?
I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about your last caller. He talked about how we don't have the engineering schools built, ready to go. We're having, I don't know how many 2-year campuses that are closing soon.
Yes.
Why can't they just retrofit those 2-year campuses and get engineering students started with their first 2 years of school at those?
Well, it's a great
Up
question.
and ready buildings. Yeah, there's buildings that are ready to go. All they need are instructors, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think that's it's a longer, complex answer. Have more time for it, but tough to have engineering programs 60 miles from the main campus. But your point is well taken. People should address this, and I wish more politicians on both sides would do that. Come on back, wrap up the show after this on the Civic Media Radio.
Real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
LA Tom says maybe Vivek should start working rather than watching TV.
As 2024 comes to a close, we're taking our annual look back at the year that was, recapping our most read, most listened to, and most impactful stories of the year. If you're new to learning about the recombobulation area, this would be a great place to start to see what we're all about. This year, we covered the RNC in Milwaukee and the DNC in Chicago and broke stories that made national news along the way. We wrote about the fight for fair maps and covered elections in the state legislature like no one else. I wrote opinion columns and feature stories and conducted extended sit-down interviews like one with Senator Tammy Baldwin. I hosted podcasts and radio shows and, of course, joined the Civic Media Network, where you've heard me all over the airwaves for the last few months. This last year was discombobulating at times, but we did our best to make sense of it all, and we've got a whole lot more recombobulation in store for the year ahead in 2025.
Find all of Dan's work at the recombobulation area and on our website at civicmedia.us.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed. Oh, yeah? Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy. Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home.
Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
The Dom Salvia Show.
How about this one? Harvey K., a Delano Democrat.
The problem with that is that was his mother's family name. You might not realize that he had a father, too.
Come on.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 9 before the hour of 2 o'clock. At the top of the hour, ABC or CBS News, depending upon which of our great stations across the state of Wisconsin you are listening to. A sports update with Mike Clemens. Did you watch the Packers yesterday's hours?
I did not.
I listened on the radio driving back from Shawano. Great call, as always, by Wayne Larrabee and The Rock on the Packer Radio Network. You can hear that, of course, on WRCO Richland Center, up in Park Falls as well, and down in WRJN in Racine and Kenosha. And was listening on the radio, and Packers tried to make it back, tried to get it done, but came up 2 points short. Pardon me. And Mike Clemens was there and filed great sports reports, as always. Packers now only have won one game, I think 1-5. Against teams in the division. Have one more chance against Chicago Bears at home before they get into the playoffs. And look, I mean, they're going to have to put this together because they're going to be on the road throughout the playoffs. And they've got to figure out a way to win one of these on the road. I know there are injuries, particularly on defense, but Packers got to somehow try to get it together before the Bears come to Lambeau Field this weekend. And we were talking, I mean, look, I know we're making a little bit of fun of this, but I'm trying to be a little bit lighthearted about some of this heavier news about this debate on immigration, that now there's internal civil war within the MAGA community. But I want to end this on somewhat of a serious note today. I have a friend named Jane. No, not Jane Matnair, a different Jane. I have more than one Jane in my life. Although, Jane Matnair is lovely. But I have a different friend named Jane. She's now in her 70s, grew up in an area of Wisconsin with fruit orchards. And every year, Mexican immigrants and migrants, workers arrived in numbers at harvest season. Her parents wanted to protect their little girl and told her the migrants were dirty and dangerous and to be feared. My friend went to college. She spent a career as a school counselor, knows all about prejudice, bigotry, discrimination, scapegoating, fear, and suspicion. And yet, she says to this day, when she sees a person with brown skin, she has a visceral reaction, suspicion, and fear. She understands intellectually about the prejudices planted in her as a child, yet she has trouble turning it off, to forget it, to unlearn it. Her education and work experience enabled an understanding of the dynamics that happened in our mind. Plus, her travels over the years to other countries erased her fears of others based merely on things like income or skin color. But many of us are not so fortunate. This past week on Christmas Day was the 100th anniversary of the birth of Rod Serling. Serling wrote screenplays and produced television shows, including his best-known series, The Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone episodes released from 1959 to 1964 are still available on streaming services. Serling began as a writer for radio, and he was there at the start of television. The Cold War was real. Fear of communists and atom bombs gripped America. Rod Serling's stories are still relevant, even prescient, because they speak truth about the human condition. In season 1 of The Twilight Zone, an episode titled The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street has two protagonists. When aliens arrived in the neighborhood, both characters believe that they were doing the right thing. One is thoughtful, looks for facts, and seeks to calm his neighbors. The other plays into fears. He divides his neighbors into us and them, and eventually incites them. Aliens did not raise a finger against the residents in this Twilight Zone episode, but fear and prejudice became monstrous weapons. The end of each Twilight episode has a concluding narrative. And here is what Rod Sterling said at the end of this episode entitled, "The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street." Quote, "The tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices, to be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill and suspicion can destroy. And a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat has a fallout all its own. For the children and the children yet to be unborn. And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone." Unquote. The words of Rod Sterling, great writer. Christmas Day being the 100th anniversary of the birth of Rod Sterling. Too often we talk about media and television, things that tear us apart or are kind of just don't do any good. That's why I always say great writing, right? Great writing in shows like The Twilight Zone have a meaning if we take time to sit and listen to them and really think about it. What's going on in Washington today, what's about to go on as we move into 2025, have your antenna up, all right? Don't rely on all the media sources, just your own wisdom, your own heart, your own gut. Listen to what they're saying about our friends and neighbors and family. Because we innately know these people that we live with every day in our communities. Don't allow words and thoughts to tear us apart. Hold fast to that which we know, which is good. Thought that was an important way to end the show today in light of the news as we move into 2025. Great show today. Thank you to Matt Flynn for being here. Dahmer's always doing a great job. Your phone calls as well. Be back tomorrow with Luke Mathers, a little Tuesday Tangent with Luke, and then a special New Year's Day show on January 1st. My own sister, Heather's going to be here as well. Todd Allbaugh, say whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, do not give up. Keep banging your drum. See you tomorrow.
All right. Adios, everybody.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.